Hi, I'm Kay Johnson, and we're here for Off the Shelf, Book Talk with Book Lovers. And this is our first show in 2019. So, Happy New Year, everybody. So tell me, Betsy, what are you looking forward to this year?
Well, I think it's always looking forward to new books coming out or getting to read books on your to-do list. And I mean, it's a time for, if you have any goals you want to set for the year, a lot of people are doing that. And so I think it's just a time to start everything over.
Yeah, it's refresh, renew,
Yes.
redo, all those good things. So did you set a goal for reading? I think we left off at the last episode. We were talking about it.
Yeah, no, I'm still kind of going back and forth.
I understand.
So we'll see what happens. I might just try to not set a pressure on myself, maybe. We'll see.
There's that.
Just see what I can do.
There is that. So are you looking forward to any special books being published this year?
Yes, there are a couple of them. The first one is called Inheritance,
Okay.
a memoir of genealogy, paternity, and love, and this is by Dani Shapiro. And in the age where everyone is doing DNA genealogy websites, she submits her DNA to track everything and discovers that her father is not her father. So I just thought that sounded very interesting because you're hearing so much of that now with them people finding this out and not having known about it.
It's a really interesting thing because I've done DNA testing and my mom, my sisters have, and we have 1,000 relatives. Most that we didn't have any idea.
But you were all related.
Thank goodness we were all related. Yeah, that was sort of the indicator to me that it was on the level.
Yeah.
And but there's also some stories out there about people who, in fact, I wrote a DNA story about people, and I had people tell me that they've discovered family members were not who they thought they were. And we've even had it in our own family. My mom was contacted by a first cousin who had been adopted.
Oh.
And he was looking for, he was related to our family through his mother.
Okay.
His biological mother.
Okay.
But he does not know who his biological father was. And his mother wanted nothing to do with him.
Oh. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, well, the good thing is they're constantly, people are, the databases are just like quadrupling overnight because of the number of people testing. One day he's going to get an email saying, guess what? And he'll have a new family.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And so I hope it works out for him because he's a super nice guy.
Good.
But it's interesting. So it's a true story.
Yes, it's a memoir about the writer.
And so she finds out her dad's not her dad.
Yes.
And so then is it a quest to find out who is?
I think it's probably that. It sounds like it's sort of the figuring out what happened and coming to terms with it. And memoirs are usually about taking a bad situation and growing out of it.
Yes, gaining some good.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I've actually given talks on DNA and genealogy because I'm into it. But it's important to know what you're doing when you are doing a DNA test because you may find out things you're not prepared for. There's actually Facebook groups for people, and I forget what they're called, but it's for people who find out the relatives aren't their relatives.
Yeah.
Their parents aren't their parents, and it's not all that uncommon, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
So the inheritance is.
Yes, the inheritance. Yes.
Inheritance. Okay.
What about you?
Me, I have a whole list. That's me.
Well, I have more too, but I figure we can rotate.
Traded. Well, I don't know what you did on New Year's Eve. But I spent the evening with none other than Verses for the Dead by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. It is the 18th book in the Agent Pendergast series. And I thought, you guys are brilliant bringing it out on New Year's Eve. Because, I didn't have any plans. And what better way to spend an evening than with a really good book? Agent Pendergast is one twisted fellow, and he's an FBI agent, and he's like a multimillionaire. And so he's got this weird family. And so it's good, and I highly recommend it. And if you're a fan of Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, they both write books under their own names, but then they also write together the Agent Pendergast books.
Okay.
And this is number 18, so if you have never read them, start with one and work through 18.
Your way through. Okay.
Because this is one where each one's a little more twisted. And you're
Okay.
introduced to all the strange relatives. But I'm looking forward to. I mean, this is a great year for new books. I'm really looking forward to Jacqueline Winspear's new one. Is coming out March 26th.
Okay.
It's called The American Agent. Have you read any of her books, Betsy? She is a woman detective in London, and again, I don't know, this is maybe 13 or 14 in the series, maybe not that many, but it takes her from as a young woman, preteen as a house servant, to opening her own detective agency. And then it starts World War I, and then between the wars, and now we're in World War II.
Okay.
And she has a fellow named Billy who works for her who has 2 sons.
Okay.
And her best friend Priscilla has 3 sons. So you know that those boys are all going to be going enlisting. And so you already are like, oh gosh, what's going to happen to the boys? And how are we going to handle this? But this one is The American Agent, and it takes place during Hitler's the London Blitz.
Okay.
And it's March 26th, so I will guarantee you on March 26th, I will be reading this book, because I'm a huge Winspear fan. So what else are you looking forward to?
One coming out in May of 2019. So there's a podcast that I listen to called My Favorite Murder, and it's these 2 women who live out in LA. They have a series where they each pick a murder during a week, and then they explain what happened. And it is a comedy podcast, so it's them talking about this, true crime topic that really interests them, but because, they're a little crazy
over the top,
and some of them they talk about all their issues on the show, that they just keep it kind of lighthearted, and they've actually gained a really big following, and recently these ladies started their own podcast producing network.
Okay.
So they have a book coming out, and the name of the book is called Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, the Definitive How-To Guide.
Okay.
And so it's pretty much it's kind of the books about their story and kind of everything that's happened with it. And so I find myself laughing. They do live tours, they do all kinds of stuff and do live
Maybe
shows.
Maybe we should do some of those things, Betsy.
Maybe we could. But, and so they're just fun to listen to, and I think it'd be really interesting to read the book and learn a little bit more about them. So I'm looking forward to that one coming out. And then one that actually came out in November of 2018 that I haven't read yet. I've talked about this series a couple of times on here. It's called The Invisible Library.
Yep.
By Genevieve Cogman. And the 5th book in this series just came out, and it's called The Mortal Word. And so I'm wanting to read that one. So this was.
Have you read them all?
I have read the other 4, yes. And so this is the series where she works for an organization called the Library that travels between parallel universes rescuing books.
Wow.
Or like the book could negatively impact a world, so they take it out before it can do anything. So it's just a fun, easy read, and
Clever.
takes place in a library. So yep, and it's clever, and it has a lot of like it has dragons and fairies and so it kind of weaves all the different genres together, very fanciful, and just a nice way to
Parapsychology?
escape. Yeah, nice way to escape for a little while. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading that one.
I am looking forward to James Rollins' Crucible. It's coming out January 22nd, and this is one of the books with soldiers with doctorate degrees. These are military
The
guys.
Sigma Force novels?
Yeah, this is like, they've done a bunch.
Yeah.
There's been a bunch of Sigmas. But, and they always deal with big topics like life, the meaning of life.
World-ending topics.
Yeah, and so it was supposed to come out this fall, and then it was moved back to January 22nd because he brought out some paperbacks and different things. But his books are always good, and I really enjoy them. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And then another one that's kind of interesting, Jim Butcher writes Harry Dresden books.
Yes.
And he is working on I think it's number 16 maybe, called Peace Talks. And although there is still no publication date, we're getting closer apparently.
Well, that's good.
So we're looking in 2019 for Peace Talks by Jim Butcher, and also his the second book in another series he's working on, which is called The Cinder Spires, and this one's the Olympian Affair. And those are good. Those are both really great books, and I wish that Jim would give us a date.
Yeah.
In fact, I looked at his website today and it said, we're getting closer, so I am hopeful that means 2019.
I know. Well, it'll be interesting to see because there was a article that came out, I think it was a couple weeks back, where it says that George R.R. Martin, the author of the Game of Thrones series, has locked himself in a cabin and isn't coming out until he finishes the book. Or he's supposed to be away finishing it. And so it's one of those things where everybody's like, well, 2019 be the year he finally finishes it.
Is it the end of the series then? Is it like the last book?
Well, it's the last 2 books.
Oh.
I think this is going to be 6 and 7, I believe.
Okay.
Because, 4 and 5, the 4th book and the 5th book in this series are essentially one book. Because everybody you don't hear from in the 4th book, you're hearing from in the 5th book. And they're all talking about pretty much everything that went on in the 4th book, but it's from other people's points of view. So some of it, you go back and you're like, but why do I know what's happening? And you realize, well, I read it in the 4th book. Okay. But it's from the other half of the conversation's point of view.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if he finishes that or if he shows up with maybe another prequel.
Oh, there is that, isn't there? They do that.
They do that, yes.
So is Game of Thrones still on TV?
Well, the last season is supposed to be coming out sometime in 2019. Ooh. It's been kind of another thing that's been pushed back.
Is it because of his writing?
No, I'm not sure why it was pushed back. I don't know if it was filming or what. I don't follow the TV series as closely. My husband Tom watched it as they came out, and I sort of finished all the books and then went through and watched everything, which I probably could have gotten away without doing it because one does not really follow the other. So.
Oh, is the book better than the movie, or the TV show, or the TV show better?
I can't really compare them because there's some turns that don't match up. So I mean, I'm always in that camp that I like the books better than the movies. So
pretty much, I'm in that camp too. Not too often is one better than the other.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it happens, but not often.
So I know a lot of people are looking forward to that coming back, and some people are like, well, if this series finishes up what all happens, then I guess we don't really need to read the books.
There is that too.
So it'll be interesting to see if he finishes that or how long it takes before that comes out. But I also think for myself personally, I think with 2019, I think I might try to go back and reread some old favorites, or maybe try to go back and reread some books I haven't read in a while and give my brain a little downtime. It's good. It's nice to go back and visit books that you've read in the past. It's it's kind of like going back and visiting with an old friend.
I agree 100%. Hello, Carl Hyacin.
Yes, and I mean, it's one of those things where, do I want to read the new book that I might really not like and then feel like I've wasted all of my time, or do I want to read this stack of books over here that I've read and are well thumbed, but I know that I like them? And I always find that if I read them a couple more times, I pick up something I've missed.
Yes, I agree. You pick up something new or something you didn't catch before, or it's like, oh, yeah.
Well, and a couple of them, I know that a couple of the series I've read, there are going to be new books coming out, if not this year, then a couple years down the road. So it's like, well, it might be a good idea to go back and reread and refigure out how everybody relates to each other before I read the new
Well,
ones.
there is something to be said for that, especially if it's a series that's, the 10, 12 books.
Yes.
Then that's a, decade from start to finish. And then it's like, it's good to go back and refresh and figure out what's going on. Yeah, I
And
agree.
It's kind of fun to go back and kind of watch, even the writer's work kind of change. Because I know I've read a couple series by one author, and her one series I have kind of a hard time getting into it, and then once I find the flow of the book, I can get into it and enjoy it. And then her other series, like I devoured the books and couldn't read them fast enough.
Isn't that funny?
So it's just interesting how you can become so attached and really love this one book, but then you read something else by them and you're like, not so much.
Yep, I hear ya.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also looking forward to a new one by James Patterson. Now, that sounds sort of like an oxymoron because James Patterson brings out books like daily, it seems like. But this one's called The Chef.
Okay.
And the guy's name is Caleb Rooney, and he's a detective by day and a celebrity food truck chef by night. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I think somebody must get murdered and he gets blamed for it, so it gets complicated. So I'm not totally sure, but it looked kind of good, and I thought, and that's coming out February 18th.
Okay.
So something to look forward to then.
Yes. Always something to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. There's lots. I mean, there's a new one coming out by J.D. Robb. Have you ever read any?
I've read books by Nora Roberts, but not J.D. Robb.
Okay. She's got book 48.
AKA they're the same person.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that is true. And yeah, I didn't even think about that when I wrote it down. Yeah, J.D. Robb, book 48.
Okay.
She's bringing
Well, it
out
was-
February 5th called Connections in Death.
Yeah, well, the one thing that was always kind of funny is when she started writing as J.D. Robb, even her author pictures were a little more edgy, a little different.
Okay.
But then on the inside, when you read like the author thing, it would say like J.D. Robb shares a husband with Nora Roberts, also shares kids, and so she was being real flippant about the fact that she was writing as somebody else, and
I always
Right.
think it's interesting when they do that and then they tell they do it because what's the point of writing under another name?
Well, I don't know if it was that way from the beginning, if everybody knew
And
that
it
it was
never
her.
is,
I think it kind of came out, and then she just kind of went with it, and she played it up. And usually with her picture on the back of Nora Roberts' books, it was a little more soft and feminine, and then J.D. Robb, I just remember her being a little more edgy with dark, more like not harsh, but like smoky eye makeup and different outfit. But
So edgier.
yes, yeah,
Her alter ego.
yes.
So if you're a Nora Roberts fan or a J.D. Robb,
Yeah.
new books in 2019. I think she nails books like every month. I mean, her list is amazing.
Yeah, well, and a lot of her, some of her books have actually been being repackaged. Like they've redone the cover art, and so then they re-release them.
Ah.
So I know, like my mom, sometimes she'll be like, "Oh, I thought I found a new book," and then I brought it home and realized, no, I've read this one. It just has the new cover.
Well, yeah. Well, I
So-
suppose.
Which is always confusing, especially when they like make a movie and then they put the movie art on the
Yes,
front, and then
yes.
you're like, I don't know if I've actually read this or not.
You're right, because of the new book. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. That can be very confusing. There's a new book by. Have you ever read any of Brad Meltzer's books? They're conspiracy theories
The
and.
name sounds familiar, and I'm not sure if I've read any by him or if I have some on my to be read list.
You might.
Which could actually be both. Knowing me.
He's got a new one coming out January 8th called The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. And I almost think it's nonfiction.
Okay.
I just glanced at it this afternoon when I was kind of looking through books that were coming out. But it talks about that the intelligence service they set up then was a forerunner of the CIA.
Okay.
So I don't know. So it
Interesting.
sounds interesting. So that's one I'm going to look forward to. There's also. Do you read any of James Lee Burke
No. I have
mysteries? He's his protagonist is Dave Robicheaux, I think. Robicheaux, Robichaud,
Rubbish, yeah, probably.
French. He's a detective, and New Iberia Blues. They all take place in New Orleans,
Okay.
down in the south. And
Yeah.
he's got a new one coming out, and people who like him love him.
Okay.
And so they'll be excited to know that.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always Carl Hyacin. He's bringing a new one out too, but I don't know the name of it.
There's always books that pop up that you didn't know people were coming out with, and
Oh, it's always exciting. I was so excited when one pops up that I didn't know was coming. It's like present time, Christmas.
I know a lot of people have been waiting for. There was a new book that came out in the Louise Penny's Inspector Gamache series, and I don't remember the name of it offhand, but I know a lot of people. My Facebook pages blew up when they realized that she had a new one coming out. So, it's the Inspector Gamache series. It seems with Louise Penny, people either love the series, or they just can't get into it.
Oh,
So it's
So
kind
it's
of one of those,
either-
you love it or you hate it. Or
So did you love it?
I did really enjoy it. I just haven't had time to get back and get into it.
Okay.
Just because they're ones that I have to order from the library, and sometimes it's just nicer to have the book on hand and not have to wait.
Yeah,
for it to
that
be
waiting
delivered.
business. That's why when Kindles originally came out, I was so thrilled because it was instant book.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this business of waiting 2 weeks or waiting a month or waiting until you go to the cities to go to the bookstore or whatever.
Yeah. I know. Well, I don't mind waiting on hold for books, except unless it's a book I want to read right now.
Yes.
Then I don't want to wait for it.
Yeah. I really, that new Ellen Hildebrand that came out this fall, and I can't think of the name of it, but it's her latest one. It's first in a new Christmas series. Oh, I think that one was like $13.99 or something, and I really thought about it. $13.99.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm still on hold for The Perfect Couple by
Oh,
Ellen
Perfect
Hildebrand.
Couple's a great book.
I know. Well, you talked about it on one of our very first episodes, and I'm still on hold for it. So it's got to be good.
Yeah,
if
it's
I'm still on
popular.
hold
People
for it.
like Ellen Hildebrand. But I will say her work is not, it's more consistent now than it used to be.
Okay.
And there's some early ones that I'm not that wild about.
Okay.
And she did a series that ended last year. It was a 3-year series, a Christmas series.
Okay.
And they're great.
Okay.
Or maybe
Yeah.
great's too much, but they're a good read. And
Okay.
yeah, about a family at Christmas.
Okay.
And a couple owns a historic inn in Nantucket, and she leaves him for the man who plays Santa Claus. And that becomes complicated.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but come on.
And yeah, so anyway, that's the premise of that book, and there's children and complications and so on and so
Yeah.
forth, and
There always are complications, it seems.
there are always complications. But so
If there weren't complications, we wouldn't read the book. You know?
Yeah, that's
If there was
probably
no
true.
conflict, no resolution, and you just had to sit there and read about somebody going through their day-to-day life, you'd probably...
boring.
Get a little
Been there,
bored.
done that.
Oh, goodness. No, I mean, you got to have a little bit of conflict.
So now, do you sign up to be part of the adult winter reading program through the library?
I did not last year, but that's just because I didn't really leave my house last year. I had a 1-year-old, and it was just easier to stay home and not go out in the snow and the ice. So, hoping to sign up this year, though. I did it a lot when I was in high school, and then when I was in college and got out of college and was living in Hutchinson. But I haven't really since I moved up to Dassel. So.
I know that it'll be offered again, and people can start registering, I think, January 2nd, Wednesday, January 2nd. And as far as I know, now, if anything changes, I will certainly let folks know. But the past requirements have been to read 12 books. And then you fill out a card review. That's super easy.
Yeah.
And then you get prizes for every 3 books or every 4 books?
I think it's every 4 books.
Every 4 books. So it's
Yeah.
like a tote bag or a mug.
A mug, and then you get, like, I think you could get hot chocolate, and
Yes.
then you could always get a there was a bookshelf when I worked at the library myself growing up. When I was in high school, I worked there. And you could get a book off of the bookshelf. And then
Right.
if you did all 12, they used to have like a dessert.
They still do
Okay.
a special dessert buffet
yeah, for everybody that finished.
event, and everyone's invited, and it's fun
Yeah.
and stuff. And so I have typically not done it because I write about it, and so I always kind of felt like it might be a conflict of interest. But I enjoy going to read the cards.
Yeah.
Because I usually will write a story about what people are reading.
Yeah, I remember there being a big binder, and they'd put everybody's papers that they filled everything out about in there. And, you
And
could
now
go
it's
through
just a
and see.
card, and they
Oh,
keep
okay.
them. It's small, and it's easy to do. But
Good.
it's fun because people will pick their favorites, and invariably, William Kent Kruger, Minnesota author, shows up. He's very popular.
Yeah.
Grisham, our tastes in Hutch or the surrounding area are very much in line with what's on the national bestseller list.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
I hope I sent a email to Katie Hiltner, the librarian, looking for what books she thinks will be big this year.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking there'll be some of the ones we've talked about. And I don't know if John Grisham's bringing out, he brought one out this year, The Reckoning. And I can't remember if he publishes every year or
Okay.
every 18 months. I'll have to look.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a lot of great Minnesota authors. So if people are looking for books, they show up in the book, the Adult Winter Reading Program,
Yes.
because they get bonus points or something. And so I couldn't figure out last year why there were so many Minnesota authors. Then I realized it was because it was a bonus point. But there's some really great authors like House Wright's mystery writer, really great. I highly recommend. He has 2 series. One's guy's name is Holiday, and I forget what the other one is, but they're both good. And William Kent Kruger's good, and I mean it's just fun to discover new folks.
It
And,
is.
there's been more and more author programs through the libraries too, and so I think that hopefully will continue in 2019, so you can discover new folks when you actually hear them reading from their books, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, it is. So if you have any books that you're looking forward to reading this year, or if you have anything that you think we should read, you can let us know on Facebook or on Instagram, or you can send us an email at offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com. And until we see you next time, happy reading.